All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I am broadcasting from the internet, which is where everyone is always, because no one leaves their houses or their workplaces. But I'm here with someone who I think I've wanted to have you or someone from your band on the show for a long time now, and I'm glad we're finally making it happen because you've been a pretty significant presence, I guess, in the local music scene for the past number of years, and got a lot of questions for you. So I think the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and maybe give a bit of background about what it is you do in the local music scene.
My name is Jorge Requena Ramos, and I am the lead singer and artistic director of the Mariachi Ghost. And I am also the artistic director of the Western Cultural Center, which is a force for good in the local music scene.
Totally.
And I'm also a BIPOC music advocate, trying to take the powerful to task when they use the term diversity or inclusion. I make
Right.
sure they're actually fucking doing it.
I like that. I like that attitude. I definitely want to get into that in a little bit too, for sure. But I guess, I mean, the Mariachi Ghost is, I think, what you're probably best known for within the music scene, just because it's been probably a decade now, right? That you've been playing as that group, and
Mhm.
I think you've been fairly high profile as far as Winnipeg bands kind of getting out there beyond the borders of the city. So, what is the actual history of that band? Without going into too much detail, like how did you actually get this thing started?
The Mariachi Ghost was kind of an accident of sorts. My friend Gabriel and I, who both run the band together, started playing music after anthropology classes in university in 2005 or six.
Okay.
And Gabriel was learning Spanish, or was already pretty good at Spanish, and he was interested in Mexican music and Mexican rock, and so he started playing, learning some songs, and that interest turned into some traditional Mexican music, which I was very highly exposed to when I was growing up because my mom is a musician,
Okay.
and she likes mariachi music a lot. I grew up in the region where mariachi is very popular and created, naturally created in that area. And then
So you were raised with it then. You have it like in your bones.
Yeah, like even if I didn't want to like it, I would have
Yeah,
to like it because of how much exposure I had to it.
sure.
I auditioned for some of the bigger mariachis in Mexico City when I was young, and I didn't actually make it in, but I had it in me. And so Gabriel and I started playing a little bit of traditional music. I did so kind of begrudgingly, and mostly because I missed my mom and missed Mexico and missed those traditions. And what I did not realize is that traditional music, all traditional music with traditional Mexican music, is very intricate, syncopated.
Yeah,
It's in different rhythms. It has really complicated things that music theorists, um, often talk about. But I just grew up with it. I didn't know that that's what was happening. And at the same time, I grew up in Mexico City, which is a big city that had a big love for British music, specifically in my circle. A lot of punk bands and a lot of metal bands and a lot of dark bands, and
okay.
we call them urban tribes in Mexico City. And so Gabriel was also exposed to all of the music that I grew up with, listening to Mexican bands and British bands. And so we started kind of just playing music for fun. And at one point, my friend Ray was running the outdoor stage at the Fringe, and I had been a heavy Fringe fan in the beginning of my stay in Winnipeg,
Okay.
and I had gone to that stage to look to listen to music a lot. And at one point, when he started doing that job, I was like, "Hey, man, can I play a show like on a Wednesday or something?" And he was like, "Sure. What Wednesday do you want?"
Cool,
And he
cool.
just booked us. And so that prompted me to actually create a band for the show. Um, and uh, and I started calling upon friends who I knew played music and who I knew were cool, and I liked their bands. I think I poached half of the band called the Shouting Ground. I grabbed and Ian, Tim and Ian from that band at that time, and then Gabriel and I and my friend Roy and a couple of other people that I knew from theater school
Okay.
decided to play. And I think it's because I was going to theater school. I had just finished film school and been exposed to theater in a tangible way, that we wanted to put on a more than just a band kind of show. I wanted to make it visual and magical. And what we were talking about was certainly um, things about related to the supernatural, et cetera, in the music. And so um, we just kind of started rehearsing, and the magic started happening like right away. I felt like we were doing something different because we had so many influences that we're trying to sort of pressure cook in the band. we only had like a 2 weeks to like learn 7 songs or something.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that environment of pressure cooking really allowed us to develop something interesting and unique, and not necessarily polished in the beginning, but I felt that there was something interesting and unique, and so we started working on that after that Fringe show, which we had a pretty good response for. We started work on it pretty hard, and with more intent.
Hmm.
I was writing a comic book about we have a legend in Mexico called El Charro Negro, which is this justice-seeking ghost
Okay.
that goes around with a machete, and if you have been unfair or unjust, or you're one of the, like, the unfair rich people of Mexico, or you've been cheating on your wife or whatever, he will find you and cut off your head. And so El Charro Negro, we call him. And I mean, it's sad that he doesn't exist, because the world would be a better place.
Yeah,
But
probably. Yeah.
I wanted to make a comic book about a Charro Negro, but in a modern way. And so I
Okay.
created this character who doesn't know if he's dead or alive. He suffers from some sort of mental malady, and he only really feels alive when he is embodying the ghost, and he feels mostly dead when he is embodying himself, Gonzalo, just kind of suffering, and he's had everything taken away from him many times in life, to the point where he's kind of um, half cooked. Like he doesn't quite know what's happening all the time, but he knows who's fair and who is not. And um, he accidentally encounters the Mexican god of thunder and rain on the storm, Tlaloc. And Tlaloc in the legends of Mexican of the old gods is kind of like an Odin figure, kind of
Okay.
like a Thor figure mixed together. If you think about Norse mythology, is he's a character that comes to the earth to give people um, agriculture. Like, he appears now and like brings all this kind of, with his storm, it's a storm, and like you suffer through it. And when you're done through the process of the storm, all this like nature and green and like wellness and abundance comes from that.
Okay.
And so
Huh.
he's kind of that character. And so Tlaloc puts the mariachi goes through this ringer of training and becoming the mariachi ghost, and gives him the identity of the mariachi ghost. He gives him the mask, um, and makes him this kind of powerful warrior, um, to try to kind of create one of his next reincarnation,
Okay.
and bring justice to the area where the mariachi ghost lives. That's the comic book. Like, it was like, in some ways makes no sense. The bad guys in the comic book are the Mason, who are trying to recreate the world and destroy the old world of the old gods. And those were the songs of the first album. That's kind of, I never finished the comic book.
Right. Right.
But all of the poetry that I was writing for the comic book, or a lot of it, ended up becoming lyrics for the first album. That was called the Mariachi Ghost.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good album too, for sure. Yeah, I like that backstory. That's a lot more detailed, I think, than I would have expected. For the actual storyline of what's happening in the songs and everything. But I also kind of like too the sort of I don't know if it's a focus, but a lot of your music and a lot of the kind of theatrical nature of it, it has a lot of sadness to it, but also like celebratory kind of vibe to it at the same time.
Mhm.
It's like a combination of both of those things that I think you pull off very well. And it sounds like some of these legends and myths that you're taking inspiration from, have some of those qualities as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, definitely. It's also in Mexican traditions of music. Um, in European music, the sad stuff is sad stuff, and the happy stuff is happy stuff,
Yeah,
and
they're
they're
separate.
kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
separated. And the minors are dark and spooky and other,
yeah.
and the majors are happy and lovey and whatever, right?
Yeah, they kind of beat you over the
Um,
head with it, right? It's very obvious this is supposed to be a sad song. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but in the Mexican traditions, you can have a completely ultra sad song in majors, and you can have a very happy song in minors, and like all of salsa is like you're currently dancing and you're feeling,
yeah.
and it's a party, but it's all in minors, and so it's, um, I I wanted to sort of use some of those intricacies, because also feelings in Spanish are more complicated. Like, when you talk about death, it's, yes, it's sad, and yes, it's but it's a part of life, and it's the end of life, and it's a moment where you kind of celebrate somebody's life also,
Sure.
as well as sadness. And so, you, I wanted, love is never just love. Love comes with suffering. You need to suffer for love if you want to really love.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to put all of that in the music. I wanted to make sure that we were developing this like soundscape that is kind of like an emotional landscape. um a- and I mean, it was really helpful to be able to be working with people that were from a different culture, because people like Tim Friesen, our keyboard player, who's an amazing and incredible composer and musician, was able to sort of help majorly with the arrangements of the vocals, for example. And all of like his keyboards carry some of the like really magical sounds of the Mariachi Ghost, and some of that like the cutesy things that you feel. There's like all of a sudden that something that feels kind of um like a glockenspiel, or
Yeah,
that
yeah.
those kind of like almost childish things that are in the music. That's all Tim. And so like it was the collaboration of my being able to explain the ideas, I guess, um and other people being able to collaborate some of those musical ideas really really paid off.
Well, I guess the having the multiple cultures involved in interpreting this music that originates in one culture, you're going to definitely have people just naturally, unconsciously bringing in different influences that are going to make it unique, just necessarily, right?
Yeah, exactly. And genre to us felt like, to me, has always felt like flying a flag of like, I play this kind of music is like a
Yeah,
very limiting and dumb thing to do. And sorry for everybody that actually likes just jazz or whatever,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like it's really stupid, because you can express the same feeling with punk music than you can with mariachi music. You
Sure,
can
sure.
experience rage with the same rage. um, so I wanted to be able to put those two things together, like punk rage and metal rage and mariachi rage, and mix them and make it one thing. And I felt like people were going to be able to latch themselves onto that sort of nuanced understanding of what they were feeling at a show.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that it probably goes without saying, but the live presentation of your shows also adds to that as well. Because, like you were saying, when you first started the group, having that visual element and that kind of it's very striking. I mean, even just seeing a photo of the group is striking with the makeup and with the way you're dressed and everything. You get a vibe from it just from looking at a photo, and then seeing it live, kind of full on. It's an experience for sure.
I think that that's when you were saying that we were some of the people that were able to sort of break out of the scene and go places and stuff like that. It's also because of that.
Yeah,
Um, I think we were very lucky that some people took some really, really, really good photos of us. And so
it
when,
helps, right? Yeah,
yeah, it's majorly helpful. When festival bookers were looking at the band, they were like, "Oh, I don't know what they sound like, but they look good."
yeah,
So
yeah. It looks good on a poster, right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't want to talk too much about the pandemic because everyone's sick of hearing about it. But I mean, as we just said, you have a band that is very, very visual. I feel like it's the records sound great, but it's something to be experienced live. How has this affected you, just in the sense of you can't play shows, the whole. I mean, let alone your job with the West End Cultural Center, just as the Mariachi Ghost. How has this impacted the band and what you would hope to do in the last year and a bit?
Well, we have been able to rehearse for a year.
Yeah, yeah,
Restrictions haven't allowed us to get together in any kind of tangible way. We were able to get together in the summer, and we played some shows at a distance for a couple of festivals. And um, it's a complicated time, because it seems like we're just at home, but we're actually all really really busy during the
yeah,
pandemic. Like it's like there's stuff to do when you're at home, sometimes more so than when you're at work. And
for sure. Yeah, yeah,
um, yeah, it's been actually quite a drag for us, because I haven't seen my bandmates for a really, like, at least for 6 months, since November,
yeah,
October, November. And we kind of operate kind of like a family. We're like each other's best friends, and hang out all the time. And whenever there's a family gathering, everybody comes. And like, oh, blah blah blah's birthday, this 21 people show up to your house, and it's
yeah.
awesome. And we haven't been able to do that at all. And we had a really nice rehearsal space that took a long time to sort of get to the right place, and um, a good rapport. And then at the same, and that's kind of sad. But then at the same time, we're welcoming the break from what our routine, and realizing that the music industry is not a friendly place for musicians,
Right, right. Yeah, yeah,
believe it
yeah,
or
yeah,
not. And that we sometimes put all of our eggs into this music industry basket that is not designed to provide for musicians. And just working at home and having a paycheck
Yeah,
is kind of
yeah,
awesome. And so it's we're learning a lot about ourselves. We're also at a point where like some of us are turning 40, and so
yeah, yeah.
it's that part of life for the
Totally.
Mariachiinos.
I'm right there too. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I get
you
it.
know what it feels like. You have
Yeah,
to put your kids to bed,
yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so uh, the dream of what we did, the reasons we did what we did, and how we wanted to do it, and the things that we wanted to achieve are put into perspective by the pandemic.
Hmm.
And they were already kind of being put into perspective, but like, okay, so we can't play shows. I had been trying to digitally tour for 5 years.
Okay.
I had been trying to do live streaming for 5 years before the pandemic. Our old manager Sergio was all gung ho for it. We found a company in Germany that was doing it 5 years before it was a thing, and nobody bought into it. I reached out to every festival, every radio station in North America, being
Oh,
like, "Hey,
wow.
the Mariachi Goes was to do a show from our rehearsal space. It's a really visual thing. It's $1.
Yeah.
You get 10 cents of the dollar, like what everybody's doing now, and nobody bought into it. I was like very disappointed, and now it's what's happening. So I
Yeah,
wish I had
you're
actually
too
done
early.
something.
You're too early. Yeah,
It's too early for it.
yeah.
But just yeah, touring with 8 people is hard at the best of times, just in terms of logistics, and the pandemic is definitely a bit of a bullet in the knee.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Well, and then like just to talk about what you're doing with the West End, I mean that's got to be a similar impact in the sense that shows aren't happening really at all, and they haven't for aside from a brief window last year. There was a few weeks there where people were able to have shows, but for the most part, it's been live streams or nothing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky to have come to the West End bringing 20 years of television experience
Okay.
as a producer and director, and
Yeah,
so
that
I was
helps,
able
right?
to put together. Yeah, right now this is very important.
Yeah.
I was able to put together an excellent team to create the online concerts that we provide at the WEC, and to put out some really high quality stuff.
Yeah, they were very professional compared to some of the other ones, and not that there's anything wrong with the other ones, but yeah, you guys definitely were doing it the pro way for sure.
Yeah, that's it. We wanted to make sure that the artists were putting, we're going to have something that 10 years from now they can look back into and say, man, that was a good show, even though it was the pandemic, something good to remember. And, um, that took a lot of work at the WEC, and we were happy to have the time and mental space to do it. We wouldn't be able to do anything like that if we were like, pouring a touring band through the stage every week,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
what we were doing. And then a more important thing is that we're going through strategic planning, um, a new strategic plan for the next 5 years,
Okay.
and maybe more, maybe longer. That is an anti-racist and anti-oppression strategic planning, which took a long time. This is like mostly Jason is like really, really busy with this, but it affected all of us in the staff, and it affected how the board was working. And so we were very happy to be able to have the meetings to receive the anti-racism training and
Yeah,
anti-oppression training, and then to be able to have longer board meetings and board engagement to hire new board members that are BIPOC, professionals and music professionals. To have a voice in how we do stuff in the West End. So there's a lot of changes that are happening under the guise of the pandemic. I guess like
hmm,
it's we have time because we're not putting on shows as often, and even right now I can't put an online show in the next 3 weeks, but I was already not doing it for the last 3 weeks because I was afraid
yeah, yeah. No
that
doubt. Yeah, yeah.
once it gets by 5% for us, is we look at the risk for the musicians, and like if we are going to bring somebody and they are at risk of exposure in the venue, we don't want to do that. And so
Of course. Yeah.
we're working slowly, but it's giving us room to develop our winter option festival really well. And we're hopefully going to open a patio in the next month or so.
Oh, great.
There's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening at the WEC that we wouldn't have been able to have time if there wasn't a pandemic to think about.
Well, that those anti-racism measures, though, I mean, it's really great to hear that that's happening at a venue like the WEC because of kind of its place in the local music history and in the neighborhood it's in, which is a very diverse neighborhood and everything too, to have that happening there. And I know you mentioned kind of right off the top when we started talking today about wanting to make the music scene more diverse and actually do it rather than
Mhm.
just lip service. So how does Winnipeg make that happen? How does Winnipeg make the local music community have more representation kind of across the board?
It's interesting. It can't just be Winnipeg. One of the biggest problems that we had as the Mariachi Ghost is that, and I'm gonna say this. This is gonna sound like totally insane and super self-indulgent, but I think we were the coolest fucking backing band in the world when we were like at the height of our might in
Yeah,
like 2015 and 16. We were playing so hard and so good. It just felt like the shows were awesome. And I remember playing at the jazz festival and like 3,000 people just
yeah.
being at the like the tip of our fingers. We could have done whatever we wanted with the audience, you know. That kind of feeling, that rock star feeling, that we experienced a couple of times, and we got pretty far. But the reason we didn't get any further is because the name of the band sounded brown. And
Sure.
so
Yeah, yeah,
and when people wanted looked at heard the mariachi ghost, they wanted a mariachi band that played mariachi music, and they were mad sometimes when it was a rock band, and some people that saw us and loved us and watched us play and then asked the name of the band, the Mariachi Ghosts, were like, no, that's not a mariachi band. And so it became really complicated. Like we didn't get any attention at the top of, like, we were at the top of national charts on the
yeah,
radio for we were at the, like, going to South by Southwest, invited to the Canada House in Estonia, like representing Canada internationally. We couldn't find a booking agent. We couldn't find a record label. We couldn't, like, we couldn't find a distributor.
that's
I
crazy.
That's insane. It is like actually insane. I didn't know this back then because I was a young person
Yeah,
that was, I was like loving what I was doing, and I was doing it out of the love, and it wasn't my job. We were all doing it because we loved music, and we all had jobs, but we wanted to do music. And we had a dream. We had zero grant money, never paid ourselves a cent for like 8 years of the band.
yeah.
And at one point we actually started applying for grants and developing, and we got signed by Paquin. We got signed and then dumped by a big record label twice.
Okay. Wow.
I think for the same reasons, and that's kind of, it brought us to a place where we were working on the new album, but from a very jaded place in the music industry, and not with enough um, understanding of our feelings to act like vantage point to
Okay.
actually articulate how we felt as a band, and our frustrations. And so when we actually came to a place where we were able to kind of therapize each other and apologize to each other for the anger that was kind of running around the band, and um, all these other things that felt frustrating, we realized that it wasn't our fault, that we had been co-opted by a system that wasn't designed for people like us to succeed. We were challenging the establishment, which meant without intending to, and in that brown people stay over there, play music over there, and then white rockers
Yeah.
stay over there and play music over there, and then
Well,
suburban kids from Toronto play over here. You know,
well, it's interesting though because like the combination of things, the duality of your sound, which is what makes the band so great, is the thing that they were pissed off about. Like the fact that you're blending, like even sometimes psychedelic kind of rock stuff with this traditional mariachi music is what I like about your band, and it's just kind of sad to see that people couldn't handle the combination.
it was the audiences that loved the band,
Yeah, sure,
and the
yeah, yeah,
industry that didn't. So it was very weird. It should be that audiences and artists are put together by the industry. That's what should be what the industry is there to do. But that's not what the industry does. The
yeah,
industry is there to generate money in the exchange. And they figured that it's easier to make money if this exchange is very easy to them. And so they despise anything that becomes complicated. And that is bad for diversity. That is
sure,
really bad for diversity, because though we are an early adopters of this sort of like cultural first, experimental music, multi-genre, diversifying force, we're not the last ones. We're
no,
definitely not the
no,
last ones. Like I'm looking at bands like Teke Teke now. This like Japanese psychedelic band from Montreal, and they definitely don't give a fuck about genre, and they really don't care about what the industry is thinking. They're just
yeah,
doing their thing. And so, as a musician who's been chewed and spat out by the industry, I'm trying to create a place in the industry for those people,
Okay.
so they don't have to apply to Junos. Take it, just put out what I think is the best album of 2021. They're not gonna get nominated for a Juno because they will apply for the rock category, and the people in the rock category will be like, are they Asian? Hmm. They should probably go to the world music category.
Right.
And the world music category are gonna be like, but they have amplifiers.
Well, and the world music category is bullshit anyway because it just throws so many different genres into a big pile, and they're completely unrelated styles of music. Like,
Exactly. So there is not a system where these musicians is designed for these musicians to be successful. And so you know, people that like record labels want artists that already have a Juno to sign them
yeah, sure.
or other awards. Booking agents want artists that already have a Juno to sign them. But in order to get the Juno, you need to play whatever the Junos say is a Juno of all album. And so if you create something you like, but it's not what they like, you can't, even if the audiences love you,
Yeah.
you can't be successful. And so I'm currently trying to get the Junos to delete the world music category with a whole bunch of group of people, a large group of people that is making this effort, and open up a multi-genre acceptance of categories. So basically, right now, if you apply to rock, you can't apply to anything else.
Okay.
And if you apply to world music, you can't apply to rock, even if you're both.
Right. And
So
a
I'm
lot of
trying
people
to
are
get
both.
them,
I mean, a lot of people are shifting. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
majority of them, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to get them to change that. It's just a small change, but in semantics, it's going to make a big difference, And there are other things like that the music industry needs to sort of look at um, with an open mind and an open heart, which is not going to be easy, or um, it's not. They're not going to go down without a fight.
Sure. Well, because they've so established for so many decades of this is how it works, right? Yeah.
And like whatever Johnny World Music, who like lives in a suburb of Toronto and like drives an Audi and is a Juno committee member that has sold a lot of like 75,000 records for of African music, and like or whatever.
Yeah.
That guy doesn't want the guy from the Mariachi goes to come and tell 35-year-old guy from the Mariachi goes to come and tell him, hey man, fuck you.
Yeah.
This is not your space anymore. That they don't want that, right? And so, but those people are there for us, and so as musicians, we need to make sure that they remember that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, do you think it's
Like,
changing though? I mean, I feel like younger generations are way more open in general to basically what you've been saying. I mean, I think if you asked a 60-year-old and a 25-year-old, the 25-year-old is going to be on board with what you're talking about just naturally, right? And I mean, the older generations they're dying off. Like there's a few dinosaurs hanging around trying to keep the system as it is. But I think that we're hopefully in for a positive change as younger people who are growing up in more diverse societies and growing up with the understanding that rock music isn't just this one thing, or that hip hop isn't just this one thing, or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you have like some optimism for the future?
In a way, the Grammys just added a diversity liaison person that is there to like sort of make sure that there's inclusion in different genres.
Okay.
I just saw the first Black person win the Americana music category in the U.S. Ondera, and he's an incredible musician from Kenya, actually just first generation immigrant.
Cool.
And so I think that there are little things like that happening in the music industry that'll eventually ripple and change things. And so when your question was like, how does Winnipeg change this thing? It's like we kind of have to change. Unfortunately, Winnipeggers and the Winnipeg music industry is very prone to listening to the trends of the bigger centers.
Yeah, Toronto is going to dictate. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even though we have some of the best musicians in the country and some of the most cutting edge
Yeah.
concepts in the country, we're still listening. And so, which is, I think is a mistake, but we're still prone to do that. And in order to change the environment, which is actually is an actual like completely environmental change, we're going to have to make sure that organizations like the WEC and Manitoba Music and Manitoba Film and Music and the Junos and Factor and the Canada Council and the organizations that help us put together the Heritage Canada, the organizations that help us put together the festival system, that pay
Yeah.
for everything, that all of those organizations have large BIPOC conglomerates in their boards. So that they're listening to the communities in a tangible way. And then we need to make sure that anti-oppression and anti-racism training is received by everybody, every staff member at Factor, every juror at the Canada Council. And then we need to make sure that the Manitoba Film and Music Board is more diverse. We need to make sure the Manitoba Music Board, and they're making their efforts already,
Yeah.
is more diverse. And we need to make sure that the programming is happening from a diverse perspective. How many artistic directors of festivals do you know that are not white, other than me?
None.
Yeah, so you know, I
None.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying they can't do their job, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they do a bad job. I'm just saying that the representation of BIPOC people is very low in the music industry,
Sure.
other than in specific places where we like them, right?
Yeah. Right. 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 And there's so much. I mean, there's so many artists, but if they're not getting to the higher levels and getting those jobs with festivals or venues or these organizations, yeah, it's not gonna change anything anytime soon. So it sounds like there's a lot of work still to do, considerably, before anything gets significantly better.
Yeah, there. I mean, yes. I'm not alone. There's a movement of us who kind of came from the same place of like frustrated um, brown and black musicians who got the bad the terrible end of the spectrum and of the stick, and are kind of putting together our heads to sort of change things and change organizations that are like sort of entrenched,
Yeah.
and becoming. This is the big step is we want to. And I mean the WEC has always become has always been a beacon of diversity of the city, and that's why I'm very happy to be there. um, but part of our efforts is we want to become part of these organizations where we have perceived that racism is institutionally entrenched, for but with good intentions or bad
Yeah.
intentions.
Yeah.
We don't think that anybody's themselves are like making efforts to be racist. Those places exist in Canada, but we don't
Sure
think
they
that
do.
that's
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
We just feel that then we need to take, as BIPOC artists, we need to take over those spaces and make sure that we're diversifying ourselves those spaces, because it can't be up to um, them. It has to be us.
Well, it hasn't happened yet when it was up to them for the past 100 years, right? So or
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we're like, whenever there's a job posting for like, hey, there's an officer job at the Canada Council, we all like we pass it on amongst the 100 of
Right.
us that are there, like, oh, one of us better take it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we need this, and so we're organizing little by little to get these things moving.
Cool. Well, that's you got a lot of work ahead of you, I guess. But I mean, it's like you said earlier, the pandemic gives you time to work on stuff that maybe you wouldn't have had time if you were actively touring or whatever. So hopefully that helps with these kind of initiatives as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the band, for better or worse, we have a certain amount of clout. We've
Yeah,
achieved a certain amount of things, and we've gotten respect from the industry for the stuff that we've achieved, and that helps us with this, like our mission as a band now, because we're not going to get rich or famous anytime soon.
right, right.
Um, we want to make better music, and we want to be able to sort of still do the things we do the way that we want to do them. But our mission is to now, as a band, is to make sure that we're putting the spotlight on the places where we think needs to be placed. And so it is an effort of the band to try to change the Junos and other award systems. And so that's kind of every little interview that we have or bit that we have, we make sure we're talking about it. We make sure we're
Sure.
playing music about it. We make sure that that it's the new important role for us, and we're all very happy to sort of collaborate with that.
I'm glad to hear you're doing it. It's important, and it's especially in a city like Winnipeg, where I mean, the amount of diversity within the musicians just alone. I mean, there's so many people from all different backgrounds and trying to get their music out there and get their voices heard. And yeah, if they're facing the same troubles that you face and others have faced, then it's we're missing the rest of the city and the world and the country is missing out on some great stuff that just isn't getting through that barrier.
Exactly. Yeah, like we're all listening to Justin Bieber when we could be listening to Teke Teke. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah, totally, yeah, yeah. So I guess what's next for the band musically? Like, I mean, I know you said you haven't been able to rehearse in a year, and do you have kind of a plan going forward, or is it just sort of waiting to see what happens with this situation we're all in?
I think it's an interesting time for us to sort of we accepted that we needed to take a break. Um, but not like it's kind of great because it's like we don't need to take a break because we were mad at each other, which at one point almost happened. We needed to take a break because we needed to take a break. We've been working hard for 10 years,
Yeah, it's a
and
long time.
it's not optional at this point. No, we can't say no to shows because there's no
Yeah,
shows to say no to. And we wanted to like take distance from each other and then come back with all the love that we feel for each other to put it back into sort of that practicing time. And that there's like I have a baby now, and then two more band members are having babies in the next couple of weeks, and
oh yeah, yeah.
two other band members had babies like a couple years ago, and like like now there's like I think eight babies in the band, and so it's we're there. It's things are changing, and I know that the material is going to change, but we're still here, and I keep posting things from the band right profile, just saying "still here," just so people don't forget that we're
Yeah,
still here.
yeah.
Um, exploring new kinds of music is super important to us, and I know Gabriel's been massively exploring, plunging hard into the synthesizer vibes and like analog synthesizers
Yeah,
and just the insanity world of analog synthesizers, and
yeah, that's a
I've
whole
been
separate galaxy of stuff there for sure. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like how the research is one thing, how cataloging it and using it is a couple completely different
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And then I've been plunging more into traditional music styles and then kind of the traditions of the 1960s and 70s in Latin America.
Cool.
The things that were seen as like underground and super raunchy, bad for you, like that's where the devil hangs out, and
Right, right.
oh no, that's for poor people, like all that kind of music. That's where the best shit was happening, and
I
so
believe it. Yeah, yeah.
I'm plunging into that, listening to all that stuff with with an ear to try to figure it out. And like I realized that what I was doing in 2015, people in the States were doing as what, I don't know if you heard of the band called Chicano Batman, but
Yes, I have. Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
basically emulated 1960s crooners from Mexico in a really really super kind of cool way. And I realized that there's a market now. Like this is the biggest realization is like there's a market for what the Mariachi Ghost does. It's
Hmm.
just not in Winnipeg as a market. And so now we're making efforts to try to get to California and try to collaborate with people that are in our scene, which we didn't know that there's actually a scene. But like the more and more we talk to musicians from the US, they're like, oh, like what you guys did 10 years ago, people are doing now in California. So you guys should get over there and start working with this stuff.
So you're
And
ahead of
so
your time again.
yeah, unintentionally, this is not something we necessarily wanted, but there's that's the kind of explorations that we want to make sure that we're there's a very small number of people in Mexico, for Mexico, that listen to our music, and
Okay.
people in El Salvador that listen to our music, and in Latin America that listen to our music, and they were nice enough to send us messages, even during the pandemic, to say, "Holy smokes, I just discovered your band," and all in Spanish, and like
Yeah.
the lyrics are amazing, and how come you're not playing in Mexico, and how come you're not playing in Panama, how come you're not playing El Salvador, and so we want to make an effort to provide for the market in Winnipeg, and people that are faithful and loving audiences of the band. And we also want to make an effort to kind of go into these places where we know there's a scene that is going to be kind of welcoming to us, and develop with them, like experiment with other people, and welcoming, like, partnerships with new musicians, and
Yeah.
try to collaborate with people that play music in those interesting ways.
Where can people find your music now? I mean, I know you have a couple records out. Obviously, people are consuming music maybe differently during the pandemic than they would have otherwise. But what's the best option for someone to track down your stuff who wants to hear what you have already released?
We were very lucky to be able to work with Pipe and Hat, Sugar Gator Records. Tim over there is a great titan of the Winnipeg music industry. And we passed in the same spaces for a really long time. My
Yeah,
my brother-in-law Sandy was Indicator, and now New Wales, and
I
he
went
worked
to elementary school with Sandy.
Oh,
I've known him
he's
since we
my
were little kids. Yeah,
brother-in-law,
that's awesome.
like literally in-law, like it's like once removed. Like my sister-in-law is married to his brother,
Okay,
Jamie.
cool,
And
cool,
so
cool.
but we're all a big family. And so I knew Tim from hanging out with Sandy, and at one point I asked Sandy, is Tim like a legit guy, or like is he like a nice guy? Because I only work with nice guys.
Yeah,
And Sandy was like, oh no, he's like the coolest, man. And I was like, all right. I actually texted Tim from Sandy's phone, and I was like, hey, can we talk? And I had like 1.5 hour conversation with Tim, and he's like, I'll take the record.
nice.
Um, like right after we got kicked out from the big record label that I will not mention. Um, um, I'll take the record and I'll put the other record on all the platforms, and I'll give you
Cool.
a distribution deal. And that was massively and endlessly helpful, because we had a beautiful record that was gonna go nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so everybody can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, whatever digital platform you want to download from. Also, Bandcamp and CD Baby, everything is in there.
Okay,
And we have 6 or 7 really cool music videos on YouTube. Some of them on Vimeo as well. If you want to kind of watch really, really fucked up fever dreamish music videos made by a Mexican in Winnipeg, they are there. And so and also we have a website, mariachighost.com. People can come to the website and all that stuff. It's linked from the website. You can go to the universe of the Mariachi Ghost and see some of those really good photos taken all over the world
right on.
that people took of us.
Yeah, yeah, cool, cool.